Hey guys, and welcome to the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local offshore, nearshore, and inshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. We got a great fishing report lined up for you guys this week, but first let's hear who's making the show possible. It's time we talked about catching some serious savings. Imagine harnessing the power of the sun to cut your energy bills and having a roof that's built to last. Convert Solar and Roofing specializes in top-notch solar installations and durable roofing solutions that stand up to the toughest elements. Their solar panels are designed to maximize efficiency, and their roofs are built with premium materials to ensure long-lasting protection. Whether you're out on the water or at home, their expert team ensures you're covered. As fellow anglers in the Lower Chesapeake Bay, the team at Convert Solar and Roofing cares about both sustainable living and sustainable fishing. So reel in those savings today and visit www.convert-solar.com or call 757-44-SOLAR. Make your energy and roof as reliable as your favorite fishing lure. Call Convert Solar and Roofing today. Listen up, folks. AFTCO has a new promotion for all Great Days Outdoors Podcast Network listeners. They're now offering a camo sunglasses cleaner cloth with any purchase of AFTCO products. I especially enjoy their hooded sun protection shirts, as well as their Seiko fluorocarbon. All you got to do to get your coupon code is text LCBFR to 779-345-2918. Again, just text the letters LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get subscribed to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. All right, y'all. Well, welcome to this week's episode of the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report. I'm your host, Luke Barton, and I'm glad to have y'all with us for this week's show, which is brought to us by the Great Days Outdoors Podcast Network and our sponsors. Each week, we'll be talking with expert charter guides about what they're seeing and catching right here in our local waters. We also promote the use of sustainable fishing practices so we can keep this amazing fishery healthy and thriving for future generations. With that said, let's jump on in and see what's been biting the hook this week. All right, guys, well, welcome to the show this week. I'm excited to speak to a new captain, new to y'all, not new to me. He's got a pretty unique story. He's traveled and fished all over the world. Welcome to the show, Captain Matt Maldwin of the Click-Through, which is the Fathom Offshore Team Boat. How are we doing, Captain Matt?
We're doing good, sir. Finally got a day off.
Amen. I know you guys work hard, so I'm sure you cherish those days off.
Yeah, I just flew home last night. Been going 7 weeks straight. So.
And where is home?
Home is Pensacola, Florida.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you flew home. Where'd you fly home from?
Ocean City, Maryland. We've been up there for about a month now, prepping for the White Marlin Open in Mid-Atlantic, which we just fished.
And for those listening that have maybe never seen the Click-Through or heard of the Fathom Offshore Team Fishing Boat, I'm sure many folks have heard of Fathom Offshore, whether it's the lures, the clothing. It's a very well-known brand. But you guys fish the team boat. Tell us a little bit about the boat that you guys fish.
It's a 68-foot Juan Cheese. And a lot of times I tell people it's a Juan Cheese boat, and they say, they're looking at it, they go, well, I know it's a Juan Cheese boat. It's built in Juan Cheese, but which one is it, a Scarborough or a Buddy Davis? No, it's a Juan Cheese. And Erwin Forbes was the builder, but he only built 3 of the 68-footers like we're on. He only finished out 2 of them. Sonny Briggs ended up finishing out the 3rd one. And he also built a 55, but it is a Juan Cheese. And it's a 1997 hull, so it's got some age on it, but we keep it looking as good as the rest of the fleet.
That's cool. And you mentioned a fleet. So what else is in the fleet?
I'm talking about the when you pull into Sunset Marina there in Ocean City, we're rubbing shoulders with some heavy hitters and a lot of brand new Baylesses and other Juan Cheese boats. And we try to keep it as pretty as their brand new boats.
I know that takes a lot of work. That's a lot of chamoising and polishing. I'm sure that keeps you busy, don't it?
It sure does. Sometimes 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week just to get it dialed in and to keep the old girl running. We're a little bit slower than most boats now, but we still try to compete with them.
Yep. And you guys have a big old tower on that boat too. What's your eye level off the water in terms of feet? How high up are you?
I'm not positive, but I would say we're probably in the 25 to 30 foot range off the water there. We use it a lot for sight fishing for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of fishing, I kind of want to dial into it. I want to learn a little bit about what you guys have been fishing for offshore recently. But let's start by talking about your tournament experience. I know we talked on the phone earlier this morning. It wasn't any, you didn't do any razzle dazzle that you might have liked to do, but just, what was your tournament experience like for Mid Atlantic and the White Marlin Open? What'd you guys see and catch?
Well, it was real slow for us, especially in the White Marlin Open. It's not only slow for us; it was slow for the whole fleet. I think everybody was pretty much fishing for the one big bite because the numbers surely weren't coming.
Hmm.
And in White Marlin Open, we did not even raise a billfish in 3 days of fishing. That's how slow it was.
Wow.
And we were fishing in the middle of the fleet. We tried fishing away from the fleet and pulling out everything we could. We're running triple spreader dredges with all natural baits on it. I mean, we went all out, trying, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. In Mid Atlantic, we did quite a bit better, but still nothing to make the board. We saw 7 billfish in that tournament behind the boat and just didn't catch the big ones. In the White Marlin Open, though, we did catch a tuna, a nice, respectable tuna for the East Coast, a 145-pound yellowfin,
Oh, wow.
which, I don't think they see a whole lot of them pushing 150 pounds of yellowfins up that way. And we ended up catching it on 30-pound tests. It took a little bit of time for us, but we got it up. And on 60-pound leader, it's not easy wiring up a yellowfin of that size that's doing his famous Charlie circles under the boat. But we got her done and tasted good, but that was about it.
I mean, that's an impressive catch just for the weight class, especially for the East Coast. But then to know that it was caught on 30-pound line with 60-pound leader, that's incredible. I mean, we get nervous on 50-pound cobias and we're on, 50-pound main line with 60-pound leader. That's crazy to think about, the stretch you must have had going on.
Yeah. And well, to top that off, we had some 6 foot seas chopped, like 6 foot at 6 seconds. So the up and down with 60-pound leader in your hand. Our wire man, Alex Penny, did a great job on that for sure.
Can we just like dive into that moment for a second? Because you just said, 6 foot seas at 6 seconds, and you've only got 30-pound main line that you're hand lining a 150-pound animal. So for those that have maybe not been in that scenario before, talk us through like how critical is every little movement in a scenario like that to avoid breaking off that fish?
All right. Well, it's very critical. I mean, we're trying to go down sea, just barely drifting down sea at that point. Alex uses real light gloves instead of a heavy set of welder's gloves type for wire and marlin and stuff. With that 60-pound, he doesn't want to cut his finger, so he's got to have some protection. He basically wiring with his fingertips just to feel that pressure, so he doesn't break the fish off. And he's done a lot of it. Up here in the Gulf Coast, we live bait a lot for blue marlin, and we'll downsize all the way to 130-pound leader just to get the bite. And Alex has had a lot of experience with that, so I trust him on the leader. We killed a 672-pound marlin with a 180-pound leader, which he wired. So you got to finesse it for sure.
Yeah, that's a dance. I mean, those are some remarkable stats to think about the size of the animal in contrast to the pound test of that leader. And then he's right there in the middle of it, just on a knife edge, doing just the right things, not too much, just enough to hang on to that bite, keep that hook in, but not break it off. I mean, got this picture in my head of like, millimeters, fractions of margin for error, and he's
Yeah.
getting them in the boat. That's cool.
We target a lot of yellowfins up here too with that size leader with 60 and 80-pound tests around the oil rigs up here off of Louisiana and Alabama, Mississippi coast. So some of these charter boat guys, they have got a lot of experience on that light leader wire, and it pays off when you're tournament fishing for sure if you got to downsize just to get the bite.
Hmm. Well, I'll say this as like a little teaser for maybe a future episode in a couple of weeks once you get a chance to do some cobia fishing here in the Chesapeake Bay. But I know you guys on that boat have won some big cobia tournaments down south. And just quick teaser, what's the largest cobia that you guys caught in a tournament? And then tell us what pound main line you had on.
We typically use all 30-pound tests mono on ours, and we typically run a 50-pound leader on all of our cobia gear. And the largest cobia I've caught in a tournament was 98.42 pounds.
92 pounds with 30-pound main line and 50-pound leader. All right.
98 pounds, yeah.
98.
Yeah. My largest one to date's 121 pounds.
on the same setup?
Yeah, same setup.
All right, we're gonna just leave that right there for a future episode. But just folks that are listening, like it can be done. It doesn't always have to be wire leader, so to speak. But switching gears back to the boat, give the folks a little education on. So we've got Fathom Offshore, which is obviously the brand that sells all those great offshore baits and lures, the clothing, and then we've got the Click Through, which is the name of the team boat. Give us a little education on that connection and how that team boat came to be and what Click Through is and means.
Okay. Click Through was our boss man, Keith English's first business that he endeavored in. And basically, if you clicked on something and trying to research something, and he probably made $1 off that when you had to click through it on your computer. Yeah, it's pretty much a data collecting agent there. But that's what got the boat name. As far as our teaming up with Team Fathom, we had 2010, we were in Bermuda for the first time, traveled there, and ended up winning the Bermuda Triple Crown, accumulation of points over 3 tournaments. And our prize package was a set of Fathom offshore lures. And at that time, the two guys, Andy Holcomb and Brandon Carter, they were making lures in the afternoons and weekends out of their garage. And Andy had an aunt that lived over in Bermuda and somehow got her to slide those into the tournament package. Well, we were leaving Bermuda and threw one of their lures overboard. And we went 3 for 4 on Blue Marlin trying to leave Bermuda to get back to the States. We hadn't even made it 20 miles offshore before we had already caught 3. And all of them, although we had 4 lures out, they all piled on that one lure. That time in Bermuda, we'd spent 15 days with an underwater photographer, a photographer that wanted to jump in the water and get a picture of a blue marlin eating a lure in his whole natural environment. That was Mark Montocchio. We were just teaser fishing and throwing him on in the water every time we saw a blue marlin and pulling him right past his head. Well, we didn't get the shot right then that he wanted. The fish has to be within 36 inches of his camera. It has to be perfect focus. But we went from there to the States and down to St. Thomas. We got down to St. Thomas. We were getting a lot more shots at blue marlin. So I called up Mark, said, we'll get the picture down here. Come on down. So he flew down. He just happened to run into Andy Holcomb of Fathom right before he flew down, and Andy had given him a couple more Fathom lures. So we get down there, we put their lures out, and Mark ended up getting the holy grail shot, as he calls it, of the blue marlin, eating the Fathom lure with their signature F as an eyeball right inside the marlin's mouth at about less than 24 inches from his camera housing. From my point of view on the fly bridge, it looks like blue marlin spears him in the head. But we got the picture, and before we even got back to the dock, Marlin Magazine had already said we want an article. You got the cover. We're going to give you a 2-page spread of the pictures. And from that, knowing that they were making stuff out of their garage, our boss Keith English, he calls them up, says, "Yeah, I want to do this for a living." And he met with them the next week, and that's how Fathom Offshore got the backing they needed to project themselves into where they are now. Now they have 15 to 20 employees, and they've already moved to 3 different warehouses now. They keep growing, steamrolling, and it's a good little success story for them.
That is definitely a good feel good success story of just, people that do well in business and have that business administrative gift and the ability to grow a business that also have a passion for fishing, and then meet guys who have a passion for fishing and a great product, and then boom, a great company like Fathom is born, and then by proxy, you got to have a team boat and a great captain, and here you are. That's awesome, man. And you and I got to meet because of the owner, or one of the owners of Great Days Outdoors, Butch Theory, one of my close friends that lives down in Alabama, knew you from back in the day. And you were up here 2 years ago and said, "Hey, I want to go catch some cobias." And he connected us. We went out and went 13 for 15 that day and had an awesome time. And here we are 2 years later. You're going to be back up this way for a little bit, doing maybe some canyon trips and then some inshore or nearshore cobia trips. So I'm excited to do a little fishing with you and see what we can drum up. But tell us about one of your recent trips where you did connect with some offshore species. Talk us through what you saw and what you guys did to get those bites.
Well, I'll tell you, not that recent, but I did have one of my best days blue marlin fishing. We just spent 14 months over on the Pacific coast, and we had been fishing and out of Capos, Costa Rica, and we were moving the boat back down to Panama. So out of Gulfito, we were going to hit a fad out there, but I had an appointment to clear out of Costa Rica at 4 o'clock up in Gulfito. So I get to this fad at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I could only fish till 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So I had 4 hours time fishing. Well, in 4 hours, we released 9 out of 13 bites of blue marlin.
Holy
and
cow.
Literally the best fishing I've ever been a part of for blue marlin in that time frame. And I had to reel them in at 11 o'clock to leave instead of fishing the next 6 hours.
That could have been a really epic day.
Yeah, we were pretty torn, but we made the call whether or not to stay longer or not. We chose to go on in and set it up with the eight. We had an agent already set up. People depended on us to be there, and a lot of plans in Panama, and we couldn't really delay it. But yeah, best day of fishing. I've fished thousands and thousands of days, and literally the very best day I've ever had. I
Had to leave, man. Well, talk about leaving on a high note. So I've got some curiosity questions. You've got this unique set of experiences to be able to offshore fish all over the world in all types of waters for all types of species.
Mm-hmm.
For those listening that are, specifically fishing offshore here out of, the east coast of, mostly the lower Chesapeake Bay, that run to the canyon or some of our, nearshore wrecks, what would you say are some of the things that you've learned over the years that you would say are maybe skills or tips that would transcend wherever you're fishing that would be helpful to think about on our next offshore trips here out of Virginia waters? What are some of those things that no matter where you go, they sort of hold true as truths that you should be or ought to be doing on your offshore trips in order to increase success?
I would guess pay attention to your surroundings, the temperature breaks, watching your bottom machine, and any type of structure you might see on that. Temperature breaks, looking for current lines, anything that might be different that might attract bait fish or, any flotsam. And anything that's different or out of the ordinary can actually spark a bite. And here in the Gulf Coast, we use Hilton's real-time navigator for the offshore satellite imagery. He seems to be very accurate around here. So it's if you're spending all that money and fuel and tackle and everything, an extra $90 before you leave the dock is a very small price to pay to be located. Because if you're not, and you pull up the fleet on your radar or something 18 miles away, you're going to burn that $90 in fuel trying to get there.
Yeah.
So go ahead and get as much intel as you can before you leave the dock. It's a big thing, whether it's word of mouth or talking with buddies, and you got to.
All right. Well, we had a classic iPhone die in the middle of some great content. So we'll jump back in where we were. And you were talking about just the importance of paying attention to your surroundings and getting located, as you called it. And I was just going to ask the question, those guys, Hilton's and their charts, what is it that they're doing from like a technology perspective? Like they're producing what exactly that you're then looking at?
I think the East Coast compared to the Gulf Coast, I think that what they offer has a little bit difference of importance, I guess. I look at altimetry a lot more in the Gulf Coast, the rising and the fallings of the seas. You have a negative and a positive altimetry. The negative is a counterclockwise rotation, which is bringing nutrients to the surface, where the positive altimetry is taking the nutrients down. But where those two altimetries meet, the rising and the falling, is generally a hot spot. And when you have a severity of it, say you've got when the lines of those on their charts when their lines come close together with the negatives and the positives, you get a little bit more concentration of the nutrients. And of course, that starts the food chain. Also, depending on it'll also show your chlorophyll, your colors of the water, and the temperature breaks, which I believe is something on the East Coast that people pay a lot more attention to, is the temperature breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from a half a degree to a full degree over a short period of short distance can be a hot spot. And if you start putting those things, you get two of those things over some structure, then you're looking at a good place to go fishing.
Yeah, and you're talking about it, like it's such a second nature thing to do, right? Oh, I'm just going to go look at the things. I'm going to do a little trigonometry, geometry, algebra, or whatever it is that you just talked about doing, comparing all those different data points. And then it seems like utter confidence you're going to roll out there and probably be successful. And I think this would be a good moment where offshore fishermen listening could kind of piggyback on that confidence, so to speak, because I know for myself with like targeting cobia, years and years of doing it, you learn different things and then you gain confidence in those pieces of information. But prior to having that outcome as a result of those data points, you don't really have that confidence just yet. So, of those data points that you can look at, if I'm newer to offshore fishing, could you maybe put in like order of one, two, three precedence or importance? What would you say is the number one most important data point to be looking at of those things that we just discussed?
That's a hard one. You want to find somewhere it's got bait.
Okay.
And you want to be fishing in some decent water. I guess chlorophyll. If we're marlin fishing, we don't want dirty green water.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fences; they can be up in there. But to increase your odds, you want some decent clean green to blue water. And I also prefer some current too. These sites, they all show the current and how much current there is. If you don't have any current, there's probably not going to be that much there. So you're looking at just where you got a combination of two or three of those data points connecting each other. And if you got them hitting an oil rig off of Louisiana, then the blackfin tunas are going to be there. So the marlins are going to be there feeding on them.
Mm-hmm.
Offshore on the East Coast, it's kind of the same way. The squid or the tinker mackerel are going to be there if a couple of those points are right there around the canyons, and that's where you want to go.
Yep. So I heard really it's look for the conditions that are going to produce bait, then look for those things to coincide with something, whether that's a temperature break or some rubble or structure. And then also, pay attention to those reports that you're getting from other people and kind of collaborate those three things together and decide on a spot and then go fish it with utter confidence, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the East Coast, that stuff seems to move around a lot with the Gulf Stream just offshore, especially if you get down there off of the Carolinas. That stuff moves a lot quicker. You get out there and I stretch out my radar and look for a concentration of boats too. If you see three, well, depending on how many are out there, boats, it might be just two or three boats that are congregated together, or in case on White Marlin Open, when you got 400 boats out there, if you see 80 of them congregated together, then that's probably where the pool of fish are at.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I've really just enjoyed getting to kind of like dive inside the mind of somebody who's seen so much water in so many different places around the world and so many different species. I mean, I could sit here like a kid at the feet of a great storyteller, and just ask questions all day long. But obviously, we got a short show each week. But I would love to get you back on here. In a couple of weeks, you're going to be bringing that boat from Ocean City down to Virginia Beach inside of Rudy Inlet. And then you guys are going to be doing some trips out of there. You guys are not a charter boat, but you're a team boat. So folks can certainly, hop on Instagram and follow Fathom Offshore to kind of keep up with what's going on, or check you out personally on Facebook, Matt Maldwin. Just to, get to follow the adventure. You kind of live a life that is obviously from the outside looking in. I know on the inside, there's lots of hard work, blood, sweat, and probably some stressful times. But from the outside, it's like, man, what a cool life to captain a team boat and go all over the world fishing. In your experiences, what have been some of the highs and then maybe some of the lows that comes along with that sort of illustrious title?
Well, the that's easily defined. That's being away from family.
Yeah.
My wife, kids, I got a brand new grandchild that was born on April 1st and haven't been able to spend much time with them. Last night I came home and got to hold them for a little while. That was real special. But yeah, just on the highlights is just seeing and meeting all the different people that share the same desire that we do to travel and to fish. We mainly marlin fish, mainly chase the blue marlin and black marlin when we're over there on the Pacific coast.
Hmm.
But it's just a lifestyle you got to love to do it. To have any amount of time invested in it, it's you really got to love it. There's a lot of people that come and go, but those ones that stay in it, you see them in various places around the world, and it's so cool to roll into somewhere that's 2,000 miles from home when you run into somebody that you saw 3 years ago and sat down and had beers with and
Yeah.
caught fish with, and that's pretty special right there.
I would agree, and I can say this for myself. We've only met twice in person to fish, and it's like you just have a kindredness, that's an immediate rapport just from sharing that love and sharing that passion. And of course, having an epic day, cobia fishing together doesn't hurt that either. So, final question for you. If you could be anywhere in the world chasing any species, where would you be and what would you be chasing?
Well, it would be the blue marlin and or black marlin. We did during COVID. We went to the Seychelles. We traveled to the Seychelles, and we had a 35-foot boat at our disposal, and we hooked the biggest marlin I've ever hooked, and we ended up pulling the hook on them right by the boat. But that's someplace I'd like to go back to and try to capture that one beast of a fish.
Yeah.
And it was a very special place where we were. We were on a little atoll out there in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and we would fly fish a day. It's a fly fishing destination, and we were there to see what a marlin fishery was like there. But so we fly fish one day, marlin fish one day, and we caught wahoos on fly. We caught the sailfish on fly. We caught yellowfin tunas on fly, and we caught all the bonefish you want. Chase some permit around, and that's the one place I'd like to get back to. It's haven't been explored too much, and that's part of it, the adventure and the exploration that drives us.
Yeah, and especially getting to a place that has all those species available. And like you said, it's a little untouched. These days, a lot of times you're fishing in a crowd. So to have the chance at some unique and special fish in a place that really isn't like highly pressured, that is a gem these days. And you said Seychelles. Where exactly is that? Is that an island?
A group of islands off the east coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean. We were actually on an island called Alphonse.
Okay.
I believe there's 4 or 5 islands that are privately owned by gentlemen where they just target fly fishing, and they have clientele that comes in there just for that. And they have little resorts on these little atolls that they own that is 5-star accommodations.
Mm.
And during COVID, we were lucky enough. Our boss man, he had been there previously, and they had to have all the employees there just to keep the island up and running, but they weren't letting people in. And we were able to come in there and do that for 5 weeks. And we had 5-star accommodations, and the only ones on the island with 40 employees waiting on us hand and foot.
Oh my.
It was something special.
That's an
A
understatement.
great opportunity that we had. A good way to spend COVID. Didn't have to wear a mask on the island.
Yeah. Take a collective of all the hot afternoons with a chamois in your hand. Like you earned it. Good for you for getting that experience, and good on Keith, the boss man, for putting that together for y'all, because that is truly remarkable. And
It was.
I'd love to get some of those photos, and we'll share that in that post this week. But yeah, Matt, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and our listeners, and just providing all of that insight and information. I learned a lot. I hope our listeners did too. It's just ways that we can become students of the fishery that we're in and use the data available to put together a picture, to set off on an adventure with good location and some confidence, and hopefully put together a bite. But like you said, you guys didn't do anything in the White Marlin Open, so it's like a good reminder. We can have all the experience in the world and all the best data in the world, but sometimes that just doesn't happen, and that's okay too.
You got to have luck.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting out of the Chesapeake Bay with you when you guys are here very soon. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that on an upcoming episode. So guys, thanks for joining us for that special little offshore segment with Captain Matt Maldwin aboard the Click Through. Y'all stick around for a word from this week's sponsors, and we'll be right back. Hilton's Offshore Charts. The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. You need the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore fishing trip. So make the choice that professional captains all over the East Coast make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com. That's hiltonsoffshore.com. All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the show, a friend of the show, to talk a little bit about what's been going on kind of in some of the cobia fishing. Captain Kenny Mills with Sea Shift Sport Fishing. Captain Kenny, how we doing, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Awesome. Well, I know you guys bounce between the C shift, the letter C, and the SCA shift when you're working for the fire department and then back on the water working doing charters. But man, it's been a few weeks actually since we talked, and we caught up earlier today, and it sounds like you had some serious cobia fishing, man. Talk me through what you guys saw today. What's been going on?
Today we made the correct turn today, and we ended up in an area that was just pods and pods of cobia. And instead of seeing some crazy number like 100 fish today, I saw 100 pods of fish. So in every pod I saw, it was 20 to 40 fish in a pod. It was one of those days for the books. It was pretty epic.
Gosh, man. I mean, do you prepare for that sort of thing, like in some special way, or when it happens? I mean, what do you do when you? I mean, that's just crazy to even see. But then, what do you do when you see a pot of fish like that? What's the plan of action?
So, judging from what some other guys are saying, and then I had a Facebook memory pop up where I was in some pods, on this day last year. And it was kind of the same area I went, but I kind of expected to see them, and so we had multiple rods, at the ready just in case. And we had no clue we were going to get it as good as we did. It's one of my best days I've ever had, to be honest. Like, wow. If anyone told you different, they'd be lying.
How many total cobias did you guys catch?
So we're pretty sure after putting our heads together, we came up with 44 cobias. So it was 100% over 40. Pretty sure 44. I have some video footage, so I'm gonna eventually go back and see for sure.
Wow.
Because it was running all day long.
Golly, that's incredible, man. I mean, so I've got so many questions running through my mind, but I do want to start off with, so you had multiple rods ready. Were they being picky eaters?
No, so these fish, as soon as anything hit the water, they were on it. And it was at the point where, if anyone's been on a cobia charter, a lot of times, your captain and mate are in this tower. They make the cast, get the initial hookup, and then the charter fights the fish. So after we caught 15 or so, we let the charter, and I always let them try if they want to try, but we got to that point where I was like, hey, look, grab a rod, go to the front of the boat, and I'm gonna point out these fish, and you cast. And people that have never hooked cobia or anything were hooking up on bucktails on their first cast, eels. We even had a couple guys get it on poppers. It was just, those fish were just on it. They were eating today.
Man, that's a great, for a charter to have that experience, and I'm sure rewarding for you as well as a captain. It's obviously hard to catch and hook a cobia under any circumstance. So to have your charter be able to experience that for themselves, it had to be super cool for them, and then rewarding for you to just watch them get that joy of experiencing it for themselves.
Yeah, it's completely different when you feel that fish take that hook, and the fact they got to do it with an eel, and then next level up a bucktail where it takes a little skill was really cool to watch. These people, and male and females, were just hooking up and catching these fish. And I made a little joke to them. I said, if y'all call and charter me next summer, don't expect this. I think they're a little spoiled. we spoiled that crew for sure.
Yeah, I can relate to that, man. We took somebody, recently took his 9-year-old daughter for the first time. Just fun fishing, and went out there at like 4:00 in the evening and caught 12 or 13 fish. The biggest was 60 inches. And on the way in, I leaned over to my buddy Brandon and I said, hey, can you explain to Piper that this is just not reality?
Exactly, man. They were spoiled, man.
So 44 fish. You divide that by the average number. That's a good day. A 5 or 6 fish 5 or 6 fish day is a good day, so you guys had 8 days worth of great fishing all in one day. So you mentioned earlier you had some video to review, and I have loved, and I know people have loved it too. Everyone's shared the videos, but I want to understand, like, what was the inspiration? You guys obviously have the 360 camera, and then you've also been doing this kind of wild thing with these pods of redfish. Talk me through what you've been doing to capture that footage and what the inspiration was for it, because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, so the red drum action off the oceanfront has been next to none. It's been almost daily you find these large schools of red drum. So you get on them and catch your fish, and after 5, 6, 7 or more fish, you kind of get tired or people get worn out, but you can't stop watching these fish. So you start getting creative, and we've done things like we throw poppers at them with no hooks on them, or we even did some water bottles that we tied up real good and skimmed across the top. And me being me, I was like, I'm gonna cast my GoPro into these fish. So I tie it up with a knot and just hope for my $400 lure not to be lost. But just wing it in there, and a couple times I'll let it sit there and they just kind of swim by it. And as soon as you start reeling that GoPro, they're eating it. Like, it's crazy.
Gosh.
They're actually swallowing. They're swallowing it and pulling drag, and then they spit it out, and then the next one will do it, and then you just sit there. And I keep my drag real light, so I hope they don't break me off. But it's pretty funny, man. It just came out really cool with the video. You actually it feels like you're being casted into a pot of redfish.
Dude, we're gonna have to share that one, because the ingenuity, I think, was just incredible, but then also the bravery to potentially sacrifice a $400 or $500 GoPro camera for the shot. But I mean, I've seen it, and man, I think it's one of the coolest fishing videos that I've ever seen, barring a blue marlin skying out of the water. I mean, just to get that feeling of what a live bait or a jig feels like flying through the air, and then to land and really see the magnitude of the school and the behavior of the fish and just how aggressive they are. I mean, I don't know that it gets much more, get your blood pumping much more than watching that video. And then talk me through, so this 360 camera that you have, it's like you guys have you're getting these eats on camera. I've seen these incredible slow motion videos that you've been doing. So how does that actually work? Like, are you guys running that pretty much like the whole day, or are you like starting and stopping recording when you're about to have something happen?
I usually don't turn it on until I find some action. And then once I get into some action that seems to be steady, I just let it run. And I have multiple batteries, and it beeps pretty loud when it dies. So I just set the thing in the rod holder for the most part. And being a 360 camera, I use the GoPro Max, and it doesn't miss anything. So like, you put it in a rod holder, and it's filming the whole boat at all times. And once you're in that action, you just let it run. And then when someone gets on, I'll grab it sometimes and kind of get different angles. But I mean, it has its own angles later on when you're editing. So you just pick what you want to see when you go to edit on the GoPro app, and it's pretty simple, man. It's pretty cool though.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I mean, these 100 pods that you saw today and had that thing rolling. I'm eager to see what you got on camera, because I'm sure you got some pretty cool eats and some wild action. You mentioned, and I want to make sure I heard this correctly when we were talking on the phone earlier. Did you get some of those cobias today to eat a popper?
I did. Same scenario as the redfish. We after catching so many, we started, thinking what else would be cool, and we busted out the poppers, and same story, man. They just ate them, and then we had the charter and other people using a popper now, and it didn't matter. Like, they were on it.
So, in your opinion,
I thought about my GoPro. I thought about throwing my GoPro in one, but they're a little more aggressive than these, as far as the way they pull, I think. But
man,
I was on the fence.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say, you got that shot of this redfish, and that's, people have a lot of videos of redfish, but there's not a lot of videos of cobia pods, and I think it's for two reasons. One, I mean, how often is somebody thinking to throw their GoPro into it? And then two, a cobia pod typically is not up as long and as consistent as a red drum pod. So normally when you see a pod of cobias, there's, all hell breaks loose. You're throwing everything, in the kitchen sink at them. And then afterwards, you're like, man, it would have been really cool to have a video of that. But of course, all hands on deck.
Exactly. Yep.
So I know you guys fish out of Rudy Inlet. You mentioned today you guys made the right turn. Sounds like you chased up the bay a little ways to find some warmer water. But in your experience, this time of year, the third, fourth week of August, what do you think we can expect from these fish in terms of their migration pattern? Out of the bay, and maybe and I know there's no science behind this, but in terms of the next couple of weeks and maybe how much longer we might expect them. What are some key features that we might look for or be on the lookout for in terms of like a storm or wind changes or whatnot that would either keep them or push them, further along in their migration?
Yeah, so what I've noticed, when they start podding up, it's the telltale sign that they're about to haul butt. And one of the things I kind of listen for being at Rudy is I got some friends that are pretty north of Cape Charles fishing, and are they still catching fish up there? And that kind of gives me an idea of all right, so when that slows down up there, it's like I know they're coming. And seeing those pods today, I would say over the next couple of weeks, we get any kind of northeast or cold, any kind of cold, I think they're going to make the move. And the ocean front's going to be on fire for a few weeks. And then it seems to come in waves. So you get a whole line of fish, and then it dies out for a few days, and you're here still catching Cape Charles or Yorktown, and you're like, okay, so there's another wave coming, and then same thing, it turns on out there. And I'm looking forward to it because it's an easy run for me out of Rudy to pop out there and get on them. They are behind schedule if I compare it to last year, but last year we were on them already.
Yeah.
As far as being out of Rudy, but from what I saw today, man, they're getting ready. They're getting potted up and taking the migration real soon, I would say.
Yeah, well, I think I speak for everybody listening when I say it. It doesn't hurt my feelings to know that they're a little behind schedule. So I'm glad that fish don't have calendars or Facebook memories. All right, guys, it's time to go. This time last year, we were already in, down towards Hatteras. So hopefully we'll get a couple more.
The more they're in the bay, the longer the season, as far as being able to catch them and stuff. Even if you got to start releasing them, I'm with you on that.
And will Sea Shift offer trophy, just catch and release after the 15th of September? Is that something you guys do?
Yeah, man, absolutely. If you want to get with us and still catch cobia, if the water temps are holding and those fish are hanging around, we're more than happy to go out there and get you on some and get a picture. I have some tags, and we can tag them and release them.
Oh, that's cool.
That's it, man. I mean, we got no problem catching them. We typically switch over to bucktails when you can't keep them, just so you're not accidentally gut hooking a fish or anything with live bait. But other than that, I mean, it's still a go.
I'm glad you said that because over the past week, I've personally I've gotten several reports of some really nice size, definitely keeper size cobias, floating belly up and bloating out on the ocean side of the bridge. And, the consensus is kind of that, perhaps these are some of those bridge fish that folks are, gut hooking and then breaking off. Any advice or thoughts on that as far as how we can help preserve and sustain the species, this time of year when they're on structure and there is the risk of a lot of break-offs? Is there anything we as anglers, especially recreational folks, can do better to try to avoid those outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, if you absolutely still want to use live bait, you can. One simple thing is you're watching the fish eat. As soon as you see them take it at that moment, set that hook.
Okay.
A lot of times we like to sit in a tower if we're trying to keep a fish, and we just let them eat and let them eat and let them eat, so you got them. But the other thing that you could try is switch to circle hooks. See how it works out. My experience, you do miss more fish that way, but it ends up in the corner of the mouth 8 times out of 10 when you do use the circle hook. But you use the bucktail, that thing's always moving forward, and it gets hooked, and then you hook them right in the mouth. So that's just my experience, and maybe try your best to not kill something that you're not going to keep.
Right.
I'm not here to tell anyone anything about don't do this, don't do that. I just say what I do, and if someone's looking for a way, I think those are things to try.
I think that's great advice. And I would break it down to this. Like it's tough to if you're not extremely experienced with visually teasing them till you get that eat and you're more of the cast it in there and let it, swim down and then hope to get that eat. Definitely try switching to that circle hook, especially this time of year when the fish are plentiful. You're going to see pods, you're going to see lots of them on the bridge or in bait balls, so definitely try the circle hooks out, or try to be a little bit more in tune with that visual eat. And, especially if you've already caught your limit for the day. Captain Kenny, I think you guys, do a fine job, but hearing about 44 fish today, man, that's just incredible. And I'll put the disclaimer out there for any future charters for you. That is way, way, way above the average. So by all means, when you book a trip with, Captain Kenny or any of the guides that we talk with on the show, every day is different. They're going to fish their brains out to, put some fish on deck, but, it could be a 2-fish day, it could be a 40-fish day, but there's never a guarantee. But with that being said, if folks want to get up with you and sea shift sport fishing and book a trip, what's going to be the best way for them to contact you and get booked?
You can follow me on social media, Sea Shift Sport Fishing Virginia Beach on Facebook or on Instagram of Fishing Captain Kenny, and you can just message me or, give me a call at 757-681-1099. And that's where I'm at. I don't have a booking website or anything like that. We stay as busy as I can be. So I keep it pretty simple as far as booking. I like to talk to everybody before I actually book and see what their vision and expectations is, and talk to them before they just book me online or something. And turns out they want to catch a marlin and a sheep's head in the same day or something. So
that's hard.
I just like to have that conversation and stuff like that. So I just keep it old school as far as just give me a call or shoot me a text.
Perfect. No, that works out great. And we look forward to talking to you in the future here soon and seeing what's happening once those fish start to make that turn down around the ocean. So thanks again for joining us today, Captain Kenny. Appreciate you.
All right, Luke, man. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to fishing with you in the future, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, that's going to wrap up an absolutely killer cobia report that's going on right now here in the Lower Chesapeake Bay. Y'all stick around for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be with you real soon. Would your insurance cover an air ambulance and a medical emergency? The fact is, insurance doesn't cover the full cost of medical flights, leaving you and your loved ones at financial risk. But with an Air Medcare network membership, you can focus on recovery, not on finances, should the unexpected happen. They take care of everything, with no costs for flights, only when flown by one of their providers. Membership covers your full household and starts at $99 a year. Visit gdo.deals/airmedcare to enroll. All right, guys. Well, welcome to this final report this week. I'm actually standing right now on the bow of a boat coming back into Long Creek, about to hit the slip after a little evening trip doing some cobia fishing. But I'm actually on the line with someone new I'd like to introduce to y'all. His name is Jesse Wilkins, and he works over there at Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle. Jesse, how we doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Good. How are you, my man? I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I knew you grew up around here. You've been in Virginia Beach forever. You've been fishing since you could stand up and walk and hold a fishing pole. And man, I know this past couple of weeks, you're over there working at Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle, but you've been sending me some videos of some pretty wild stuff going on right there in the creek. Tell me about what you've been seeing and what you've been catching.
The inlet's been going crazy, man. Those menhaden have been coming in those huge schools. So we've been seeing those bluefish come up in giant schools busting on the top of the water. I've been seeing striper and speckled trout. At the very beginning of August and the end of even January, I was catching them. I think the inlet really has just been so much lively than I've seen it in a long time. So it's been great to fish.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I know you've been catching, some of those fish right there off of the dock, but, in terms of those different species that you've been seeing, which ones have you actually been, coming tight on and getting in, and catching?
Dude, the puppy drum have been so thick this year. During the day, usually any other year, I've kind of had a hard time targeting them during the day. But this year, I've been able to go on those like random drop-offs in any shoreline. And 80% of the time I've been seeing tailing. I've been seeing fish waking on other bait fish, eating, popping. It's been kind of nuts.
Man, that is cool to hear. Talking about specifically those puppy drum, like what size class have you been seeing?
Honestly, they've been a lot bigger than I usually see in the inlet. usually after 26 inches to 28 inches, you don't really see them swimming around in the inlet too much. Obviously, they're in there, but they're not really on top of their game when it comes to aggressiveness when they get that big and that small of a body of water. But recently, I've been catching puppy drum in the inlet up to 33, 34 inches. Biggest one we've got this summer was 36 inches, and that was right across from Long Bay under the Great Neck Bridge. Like, I don't know if it's the current or if it's the temperature of the water being cleaner or what it is. Those fish are moving with the current so well this year.
Man, that's exciting to hear. I think that's one of the cool things. We talked with Chris Ludsford from Pleasure House Oyster Company a while back, and how the new bridge and the amount of like cubic feet of water moving through and how it's starting to change this fishery. And then you're talking about what you're seeing, and it does kind of connect the dots for me that we're really seeing a change in this inlet in terms of the fishery. But specifically on those puppy drum, when you're targeting them, I've seen you out there like late at night or early in the morning. Talk me through like time of day that you're having success with those puppy drums. And then what kind of, what's your tackle setup? Obviously you're there at Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle. Before you leave the shop, what are you stocking up on, to go out there and target those puppy drums? And what time are you doing that?
I'm a very simple guy. So when it comes to tackle, I don't like using a bunch of crazy stuff. I'm kind of the guy where if I decide that I want to use that bait for a day, I'm going to use that setup or that rig or that bait until I catch a fish, kind of challenge myself. But recently, I haven't really had to do too much of that just because so much has been working. A lot of fish finder rigs, just a nice little 2 ounce, 1 ounce, depending on the current, obviously, do a little slider. And then I usually do a little bit longer leader than most people. I'll do 8 inches to a foot off that leader, off the slider, and cut bait, live bait. It's pretty much whatever you can get in front of their face. Because like I said, with the current, they're swimming so well with the currents and the tide lines right now that you can put a bait in a tide line. And as long as the fish are going that general direction in that tide line, they're most likely going to see it and pick up on it. So a lot of fish finder rigs, a lot of heavier jig heads, honestly. I've been using a lot of heavy jig heads with some bigger swim baits, like 6 to 7 inch plastics. Usually I'll go with 4 or 5, 5.5. Been going a little bit bigger this year just because I've been having so much success with those bigger baits. So just getting those more aggressive eats with those bigger baits has kind of been the key to my success here.
Yeah, and you mentioned the tide lines and getting them where they can see them. So like when you're out there, looking around, what are you looking for specifically to try to identify like a tide line or a good place to set up and drop that fish finder rig down?
That's a good question. I like looking for drop-offs a lot. So you know how here in Virginia Beach, we have a lot of grassy shoreline where you'll get those grassy marsh areas that go right down into a channel drop-off or something like that. Even in the inlet right across from Long Bay, you can see there's those bridges, and then they'll have maybe on high tide, there'll be maybe 8 inches of sand. And then you walk 3 feet off of that, and it'll drop down 8 to 12 feet right off that. Those drop-offs, I've been seeing the craziest, the craziest eating patterns on those this year, just because you can hit so many different depths. The water temperature has been a little bit weird this year, too. It's been a little bit hot, cold at different areas, how deep you are. So those drop-offs are perfect because depending on how the fish is feeling that day, whether it wants the deeper, colder water or it wants that hotter water at the top, it's got both of them in the same general area. So they're really liking those tide lines where if you can see just any channel drop-offs. And obviously the Menhaden have been going so nuts just looking for them because there's going to be something near them. 65 to 85% of the time, whether it's a bluefish, a red drum, when you're in the inlet, whether you're out in the bay, there's a cobia or something on the bait ball. Whether you can see it or not, there's most likely something on that bait ball going after those Menhaden. So just looking for what they eat is really, they're going to be there if you can find what they want to eat. They're in such big numbers right now that's really the hardest part is finding where they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, so if I'm out there, fishing in the inlet, maybe I'm on a skiff or even a kayak, and I see, a big ball of menhaden moving, and let's say the current is incoming and they're swimming against it, right in the middle of the channel, what would be my best move in order to try to like hook a puppy drum or a speckled trout that's in or near that? You mentioned fish finder rig, but when I've got a ball of bait like that that's moving kind of quick, what's the kind of go-to move there in that scenario?
Yeah, what I've been throwing on balls like that recently is just the OG topwater spook or a big old 5-inch to 6-inch swim bait with a kind of a lighter jig head. Whenever I go out for something like that, I'm a weird fisherman too. I like my type of tackle, and that's the type of tackle I'm going to use all the time. So it's kind of like I'm tapped in with what I like, and that's the same thing I'm going to use every time. So those spooks and those super skinny, I'd say 3/16 ounce of a jig head with a 6-inch plastic, something bigger than you're usually used to seeing for those fish, especially when you're on a big group of live bait like that, because smaller fish, they're not as aggressive as those big drum and those cobia out in the bay. So they're not just going to hit the thing that's moving right in front of them. If there's 1,000 baits in front of their face, you want to stand out just a little bit. Obviously, you want to match the hatch. You don't want it to be too crazy, like, oh, this isn't what I'm eating, I'm going to stay away from that, But you always want to look a little bit different. Like, so what you're saying, if I saw a big school of menhaden and I was sitting on the opposite side of the current from them, I'd either throw in front of the school or behind it. I wouldn't throw it in the middle because those little puppy drums, they're not big enough to be that aggressive. They still are pretty skittish. Like, my main problem right now, I've seen so many puppy drum in the inlet recently. They've just been so skittish because that water is shallower. They know what the movement from the current feels like. So when they feel those vibrations from your outboard or something like that, they're going to pick up on it. I always tell people puppy drum are like the Garmin you have in your boat, but the fish version. They can smell everything. They can hear everything. And for a fish, they got some pretty good eyesight. So that's really the hardest part, is just finding something that'll stand out the right amount, but not too much, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's kind of cool, Jesse, listening to the way that you talk about these fish, the way they smell, the way they sense, eyesight. It sounds like you grew up and you had puppy drum as siblings, like you know them so well.
Yeah, man, I grew up in the inlet. I never grew up with a boat or anything like that. So what my grandparents called me was a marsh stomper, man. I'd get my boots on, I'd get my freaking overalls, and I'd just walk around the inlet, marsh stomp around and see where the fish were at, So obviously it wasn't the easiest thing to do when I was a kid, but now that I've gotten older, that understanding of the inlet, I know it like the back of my hand. Like, every place there's an oyster, I know where that's going to be. I know where the drop-offs are and all that stuff. So that obviously helps a little bit.
Yeah, man, that's really cool to hear. And I know that you're currently, talk me through your schedule at Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle. So what days of the week are you in there typically, and what time frame?
Heck yeah. Anytime on the weekends. On Sundays, I work in the morning. So Sunday, I'm there from 5 to 1. Friday and Saturday, I go in at 10 o'clock and I'm there until we close. So I'll be there all day on Friday and Saturday. And then during the week, it's kind of iffy weather-wise. If they need me to come in, I'll come in for them. But if I'm going to go fishing, I'm probably going to go fishing.
Very, very cool. No, I totally get that. So, and I just, for folks that are listening, if you're not sure if Jesse's in there working or not, you can always, pick up the phone and call, visit the Facebook page to get, some recent things that are going on. But Jesse's going to be there for you guys. Go in there on that Friday, Saturday all day, and then sometimes on Sunday. And go see Jesse and talk to him and find out what advice he might have for you for whatever particular inlet species you might be targeting. And then, Jesse, for those listening that maybe have never gone and targeted a puppy drum, or let's just focus on puppy drum. If I've never targeted a puppy drum and I want to go catch one here in the inlet, I come up to Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle. What are the top 3 things that I need to grab off the shelf and put in my basket before I head out?
First thing, a fish finder rig. Second thing, a pack of jig heads. Third thing, any soft plastic you think looks cool. Obviously, I tell everybody certain soft plastics, certain colors will technically pop and work to like make fish want to eat it more, but they make so many colors of soft plastics and stuff. Might as well keep some of the fun in there, right? Like, pick whatever color you like. Pick whatever color you like. Because I see some dudes catch puppy drum on black lures, and then I'll see some dudes catch puppy drums on the electric chicken, the bright orange and bright green and bright pink.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things where it's like, if you like the color, then go ahead. Just add some little fun to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my three go-tos really, because they're easy to have too. They're not any baits that are hard to store. They're not hard to rig up. They're not hard to use or anything like that. They're pretty simple. And that's why I love puppy drums so much, because for me, it keeps that fun into it. You know, you're not worrying, you're not stressing about your rigs, you're not stressing about it breaking your rod. You know, it's whatever you like. If you find those fish and you throw something in front of their face, at the end of the day, if that fish is hungry, it's going to eat.
Yeah. And they're a great fight from what I've experienced and heard. You know, you're on light tackle, a 2,500 spinning reel on a 7-foot rod or 6'6" or whatever. You're going to have a blast, you know, fighting that drum and working it all the way to the boat and playing it out all the way into the net.
I've had buddies fight 30-inch red drum for 10 minutes plus on a 2000 series reel. Like it's so fun.
That's awesome. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So Jesse, you know, before we wrap up, obviously folks can come find you in the tackle shop and talk to you there. You know, tell us you know, we're right on the verge of speckled trout season. You know, tell us your biggest speckled trout story. I want to hear this. You know, where were you? Why were you? And how big was it? And how'd you get that thing in the boat?
I was probably 12 years old. This is a long, long time ago, way back in the day. Well, for me, way back in the day. It's only been 8 years now. For y'all, that might not be too much of a time chunk, but I'm young. So I was 12 years old, and I remember we were back there in Crystal Lake. We were pretty far back. You go down Rainy Gut, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We were back down in there, and for some reason, we were just 12 years old. I was like, we were moving spots. I had I think it was a 3/16-ounce jig head with a bass assassin electric chicken. When you're a kid, that's what we all used. The electric chickens, they were the go-to. I think we were moving we weren't going too fast because we were on a little skiff. We were going at least 9 miles per hour, though. We were zooming down. I dropped a little electric chicken in the water, probably counted to 30, some absurd number. Closed my bail, started reeling in a little bit, and I had a fish. And I was like, what the heck? We were going so fast back here in Crystal Lake.
Interesting.
Like, what the heck could have bit this thing? We fight it for not too long. It's a trout, obviously, so it didn't take too long. But for a trout, it was definitely a good fight. We get it in the boat. We didn't have a net or anything. So my buddy was like, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to get the bucket. I'm going to put the bucket in the water, and you're just going to put it into the bucket, and I'll pull it up. We were 12 years old. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We get the speckled trout up, and I remember it being, I think it was 34 inches, 33 inches.
No way.
It was a ridiculous. I've never seen a speckled trout that big anywhere in the inlet after that in my entire life.
Oh, my gosh.
The biggest speckled trout I've ever seen.
That's incredible.
I'm pretty sure it was 33 and a half, but just because I will never forget that story, I'm saying 34.
There you go. I love it. Well, for the fact that you got it with a bucket.
Yeah, we had a 5-gallon bucket, put it down there, let the water vortex go into it, and we were lucky enough to where the trout went in there for a millisecond, just flicked them up on the boat.
That's amazing, man. That's like, talk about a true marsh stomper classic moment. Don't have a net.
Yeah, dude.
Who cares? We're going to get it in the boat. Man,
We're
Jesse,
going to get it in the boat.
Yeah, I love that, man. I want to have you on again in the future to hear some more of these marsh stomper stories, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to share a little bit about your inlet experience. And again, just reminding folks, if you want to go pick Jesse's brain, run on up here to Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle, introduce yourself, let them know you heard him on the podcast, and get him to show you around and get you set up with a couple things. You can go chase some fish right here in the inlet. So Jesse, thanks again, man. Enjoyed having you on.
Of course. Thank you for having me again, my man. Hope to come back soon.
Absolutely, man. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up a really cool report. Stick around for the What Did You Learn and a word from our sponsor. We'll be right back. Sam Rust Seafood, your locally trusted source for premium wholesale seafood. Servicing customers from Hampton Roads down through the Outer Banks, Richmond, and surrounding areas, including Fredericksburg, Charlottesville, and Lynchburg, for over 80 years. Committed to the highest standards in the industry, Sam Rust distributes the best of the ocean directly to your restaurant, hotel, or grocery store on time and at a great price. Visit samrust.com to discover how quality, tradition, and sustainability come together. So don't cuss, call Sam Rust. Hi, guys. Well, welcome to this What Did You Learn segment. It was a treat to get to speak with Captain Matt Maldwin from Click Through and Fathom Offshore. Matt has just an incredible abundance of knowledge and wealth of wisdom for someone who's truly been able to be dedicated to, the highest levels of tournament fishing for most of his career. I really enjoyed learning from him about kind of how to digest and understand some of that information from, Hilton's and really begin to get a picture in your head of what kind of water you're looking for or what kind of changes or where the nutrients might align, and then, connect those dots with things like, structure or bait or whatnot. So really cool conversation with him, and definitely gleaned a lot of nuggets. And especially for somebody who fishes offshore, you'll probably even gain more from hearing from him. Definitely follow his adventures on Facebook. He's just a true gem of a gentleman and an amazing fisherman who runs a great team. Next, we talked to Captain Kenny, and I didn't know that you could do so many cool things with those 360 cameras. Definitely want to see more of that in the future. And then also just, those little, common sense tips about, anticipate your day ahead. So if you're thinking that you're going to run into a bunch of pods of fish, go ahead and have the extra rods rigged and ready to roll. Nothing wrong with being prepared or over prepared if that ends up being the case. And then lastly, Jesse over there at Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle, it was just good to kind of learn some of those tips and tricks around, where to look for those puppy drum, not to overcomplicate it, to be prepared with the right, jig heads and swim baits, where to cast when you're looking at a school of, little peanut bunkers and whatnot. So definitely would encourage anyone that's listening to head on over there to Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle while Jesse's working. Pick his brain, get some insights. He'll guide you to the right tackle to purchase and be ready for your next trip here in the Lynnhaven Inlet. Otherwise, folks, we've got, maybe another couple of weeks window time to chase some inshore species, nearshore species like the cobias, especially as they start their migration. So I hope everyone is able to, get out there and get a shot at those fish. If you've not been able to, definitely check out several of our contributors. I know that Colt North with Litigator has several spots available coming up, as well as others. So please, book a trip, get out there and experience it this year while that fishing bite is still red hot. And folks, that's going to wrap up the What Did You Learn? And we wish you all a safe weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. GreatDaysOutdoors.com. Great Days Outdoors has been the premier destination for hunters and anglers looking for a comprehensive look into the outdoor lifestyle since 1997. Our stories are crafted by dedicated journalists who live, eat, and breathe all things hunting, fishing, conservation, and land ownership. Check them out at GreatDaysOutdoors.com. So that's going to wrap it up this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, to get your free AFTCO Camo Sunglasses Cleaning Cloth, just text the acronym LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get your promo code and be added to our email list so we can send you the new show each week. You guys keep whacking them and be safe out there.